my number is an 816 number in the system. But one thing that Lupita has asked me to do, and I'm super excited to do, is to help people learn a little bit about the after school world and help us connect with the network and try and help us move forward Missouri 4-H after school forward. And utilizing some of the experience I have been working with Extension since 2005. And when I was hired to work with a contract that we had in place, and also expanding after school efforts. After school's changed a lot since 2005. And I hope we are able to continue to meet the needs of that growing population of kiddos. I will have to say I have a huge disclaimer. I have some previous staff members that were on our team that when we did after school, and much of my work is their work. And so you'll see that I will kind of talk about that a little bit. Today's presentation, I really just want to give an overview of after school, and I wanted to provide a platform so we can move forward in the next, what we consider a spring semester and after school, making those connections, getting some of those conversations had, understanding the paperwork that could be put in place to help you have formal relationships with the after school providers. All right, so after school, as we know, it's not just 4-H after school is a term, so that's why with 4-H after school, it's one word. It's part of what National Council does. But what we're doing here is to combine the resources of 4-H and the university with school-based organizations providing and addressing community needs. I do want to tell you that some of this presentation you've seen before, and some of it I've added to. So in our 2009 4-H online report, there was a number of people that have done 4-H after school. And when we were together in October, I had a lot of people stand up, and there was a great number of people that stood up all across the state and after school. And I wanted to go ahead and talk about our pivot reports and kind of our expectations for this upcoming year to be working in a diversified audience of program efforts. And if you're on this call, I think that you're going to consider working with 4-H after school to meet your plan of work, so that's exciting. And then I want to also say that in November, I asked our colleagues to take a survey. The survey was not hugely answered. We had about 15 responses from that. Some of them I kind of were kind of duplicates. So this is when I asked the question to create a resource hub or some resources for our colleagues in Missouri, what items would you need help with? Need help to successfully, sorry, I forgot my T in there, work with after school programs in your community. We had some responses. Most of the responses were a list of after school projects-based learning curriculum. And I'll show you a resource for that later, and then talk also about another resource that's for rural. And then that will be coming your way shortly. And then, so this survey just really reflected kind of an interest of a few of our colleagues about a significant factor for them and some support we could be doing. I feel like in Missouri 4-H, we need to work as a team to support. We have a lot of people that are already doing 4-H after school, but we need to combine our efforts to make it more of a uniform approach, or something that we can share in a nice place for all of us to convene. So I wrote this with the intention of connect, educate, and create. And so on this first area here, when we talk about connecting, I had demonstrated this before with All Things Missouri. I do want to reflect that there's a couple things that are needed that I need to work with them to add to the All Things Missouri map. And then also the Missouri After School Network. And if you're not familiar who your ARE is yet, I need to put that in the next EYC, that publication, so we can all continue to move forward as a team. I do want to talk to you about the All Things Missouri just a little bit. As I'm working with my colleagues, I've had some questions about what's the difference between a licensed site, a program site, and 21st Century, and they might not have 21st Century, or they think they do. There are two resources that you can have. First of all, I want to communicate that there are so many after-school programs there. Here's the map right here that talks about after-school programs that are that were reported to the Missouri After School Network in 2019. These after-school programs are not an all-inclusive list. If a school program is not licensed, or if they are running through their school site, they don't necessarily show up on this map at all. I can tell you that I went with Emily to a site, they're not listed. The site that my children go to are not listed because they're not licensed. It's a parochial place, so they can do that, provide a service without having to go through state licensure. But then I also want to show you that even the ones that are licensed, look at all these green dots here all across the state. And then if you look over here, these are the ones that have either cohort 9 or 10, and then also a SAT grant. So that's not our only resource, is to work with the ones that are 21st century and SAC. I just want to make sure we communicate that there's all kinds of sites out there that if you just communicate with your local school district or community partners to find out where they are. So there's some terms that I felt like would be good to share with people today. This was also found in your fall conference or in your jump drive. But when we talk about a site, that's just in general where it could be a school building or a church or community center where they're licensed to have. They don't necessarily have to be licensed. They can be exempt and fill out that exempt paperwork. And then when you are working with partners, it's really nice to understand the different terms of their roles and positions. And so I went ahead and listed the program director on here, which is responsible for the after school program. They may or may not be on site when the children are there. They might have more of an administrative role. Sometime in small school districts, I've noticed that it might be the principal or the assistant principal who is the program director, but yet the site facilitator might be a lead staff person that's there during the time. And then there's also the term of a CBO. So the community-based organization, which would not necessarily be a school district offering that after-school service. ARE, if you don't know your ARE, I'm going to work with Sherry to get those all out and published in the next EYC so you can make those connections. It's something that they've also asked for us, is a full staff list, so they know that when they go to a site and they're asked about 4-H, they know which person in the county to connect them with. And these terms were all written by Terry and her team, but I felt like they were important for us to talk about. These two things are different state-funded through DESE items. The SAT grants, which you'll see in that previous map, they're managed by DESE, and they're very similar to the grant process for 21st century, but they can only be awarded to school districts, where a 21st century learning center is can be authorized and awarded to community-based organizations or to a school district. I also wanted to talk to you about these 3 terms here. Even though that they're listed for 21st century, these are very good terms to understand and to work with when you're working with an after-school provider. They're kind of a common language for them, which is a broad array of services, which talks about learning and the different kind of projects, we would call them in 4-H world, that you would do, but it's really talking about all the things that you can learn through the activities and programs and projects that happen in an after-school environment. The second one is an academic support, and that is where I would see our line, and this is where I've worked with community partners and CBOs that see where our curriculum that's tied to learning standards would meet an academic support for them. Some site coordinators and programs consider us to be a broad array of activities. Others consider us academic support if we're very targeted in that learning opportunity for them. And then others will host a club at their site, and much like they have a PTO, they would have a 4-H club meeting where the families can come. Also, I've had an opportunity to work with sites that consider a family engagement activity to be where they display the kids' projects and they have demonstrations. So those things are all ways that I personally see a good connection between our 4-H world and the after-school world, and ways that I've seen that work and progress. Do I have any questions? Okay.
There are no questions yet.
All right.
But I will say, I forgot to point this out, I am recording this for playback later, so everybody mind your P's and Q's.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Okay, I do want to go ahead and talk about some of the marketing tools that have been put into action. The one here on the left here, that is something that can be printed and be put in one of those real thin displays and left at a school or put in teachers' mailboxes. And those are all public, those are all available. That this one particular one right here, the short one, I need to ask Sherry to put onto her marketing box that she just opened. And then this one over here is what we used when we went to the Mosaic conference. And it was one that we took and adapted from an educational one that we used before at a teacher conference. But remember earlier when we talked about what 4-H programs work in after school, I received this data, and I got this data right here, most selected after school programs from our 2019, 2018 4-H enrollments through 4-H Online. In addition, I also collected some information from a survey that I did. So these were the most selected 4-H projects that we heard from our colleagues statewide. Now, we do have some colleagues that will be presenting, I think, on a larger scale soon on a survey that they're doing in rural 4-H and our rural 4-H, rural after school programs and programs that are selected in that area. And things like woodworking are on that list, things that just are a little different. So it's really nice to see that the kids get to select the projects and that they are different based on the students' interests and ability and interests, and some of it's just really their life experience, because just something that they are familiar with is something that they want to work with. When I provided this program right here, this form, I printed on the back our 2019-20 project list as like a 2-pager. So this is a really good resource to take and take into a site when you're talking about after school, or maybe if you want to communicate with them via email. All these things are very relevant to put in an email, or even just for you to understand and have a conversation. It's not in a PDF on the marketing folder, because I wanted you to make sure that you could add your information at the bottom and make it very personal to you and your community. All right, so when we're talking about creating, we talk about curriculum, national, local standards. We talk about club, program design, leadership, volunteer, teams. We want to make sure and work with them on a club charter. I will have to say that in the after school world, we do work with them on the club charter, doing the volunteer background check and the 4-H online thing, the professional development things that are required there are important to set up that charter, because you do have to have one person at the after school site that is willing to serve as your volunteer and your registered volunteer in order to have the club charter in place. 4-H after school, the MOU, that's also available for you if you haven't had an opportunity to work on that. It's pretty vague, but it's approved from our legal department, so it allows you to have a conversation back and forth with future partners about the things that are kind of their responsibility and your responsibility, and how we're going to move forward. And then there's also the workshop calendar. And I've asked Susan to be on here a little bit later, and these are things that I didn't know that we would necessarily cover today, like a full effort about how to register on the workshop calendar, but maybe something we could do in a future Zoom, really just based on your interests, but I want to give a broad overview today. All right, so for those of you who are not, let me go back a slide first here. 4-H curriculum, we all have it hanging out in our office. I know that I grew up going to 4-H and was in 4-H from the time I was 8 to 18. And I can tell you I probably used a couple curriculum, but most of the time we were really fortunate in the program that I grew up on that I worked with volunteers that had some very specific experience in the project in which they chose to lead. And not every volunteer uses curriculum, and so not every office is very familiar, I have found, with our curriculum. And I just want to take and encourage us to look at the things that are published, because they're reviewed and published. And I have found in the after school setting, people are super excited about that resource. And let me show you a couple reasons why. So I just pulled out 3 that we talked about earlier that are popular to select. And like the robotics one, this EV3 item right here are the ones that will give kids a good base for robotics, working with that are going to just want to do robotics. There's a lot of schools that already have these bots in place, but only know how to use the software that came from Lego. And Lily's on the call, and she worked a lot with this curriculum, and she can pipe in at any time. But from her experience, what she's described as her experience and some other people in their experience, it's a good one. It allows you to ask some good challenging questions and put some things in place. I wanted to highlight for you that the curriculum, if it's reviewed, jury processed, and published from National Council or some of our states, one of the requirements is that it's tied to learning standards. Those not necessarily are state learning standards, and we'll talk a little bit why that is important, but they are national learning standards. The first one over here on the left, the robotics one, is actually written from the Ohio University. And so a lot of times on their learning standards, it's the Ohio State learning standards or national. It's required that there are learning standards, but it's not required which one you use. Which is also familiar with the Department of Education for the United States, that it's required that you have learning standards, but it's not required that they're national learning standards or core competency. They allow states to choose. So I do want to highlight in there, if you have a chance to pick a curriculum and kind of walk through it and look at it, it is pretty impressive because it really is a lesson plan for providers. I also want to talk about, there's other things that they like this area in photography, which I know you can't see on here. But I pulled all this thing, like if you go to the 4-H mall online, I pulled these images right off there because I wanted you guys to be able to look through it. These 3 resources actually let you look through the curriculum before you order it. And this one right here gives a background. So for example, I do not have a large photography background like some of my colleagues do, but it provides me the base knowledge that I can then relate and teach to kids. I have teased before that I have taught crochet or knitting, but I don't know how to do it myself because I can follow the steps that come in the curriculum. And I did one time. I subbed for someone and they were teaching a skill that I didn't know, but we had the curriculum there, and so I could walk the students through step by step and show them and project some of the images that were within the curriculum, and we got through it, and they learned a new skill, and so did I. The other thing that people are that they like is kind of how to take it further. So on this communication, which I know you can't see on here because they're little snippets, but it really talks about the ability to provide leadership, which a lot of sites are looking for leadership opportunities for their kids. It provides opportunity for extension activities, which is important in after school when you have some kids that finish a project super early. What do the other kids do? So this provides an extension activity for them to, that's already written within the curriculum. So those things are very helpful for after school. All right, so I talked a little bit about learning standards and lesson plans. And our educational partners, both in school and out of school, are interested in lesson plans. And if they see our curriculum and they go through it, it is really a written lesson plan. But some of them want to see a lesson plan in a different format, or we need to combine 2 curriculums and to make one project. And that happens a lot in some of our work when we had an interest to do something like a community service project and use leadership, and then also a communication arts project to teach them how to write a letter. So combining those efforts. And so there's a common language within the learning standards and the lesson plan that professionals in the after school world and the educational world like. It's lesson plans are what they know how to do. We have multiple different colleagues that have been in the teaching field before they were in the 4-H field. And I really hope that we can try and work with our colleagues to help us on this learning standard approach. We also have some assistance with AREs. If this is an interest area that we have further professional development on, I am happy to help lead that for us. I have a background in social work. I worked at the children's division before I worked here, and learning standards was brand new for me. And 2 years ago when we started this endeavor, it was brand new for our team of after school in Jackson County. And I would say I've been pretty impressed with it, what the learning curve that we've been on for this, and how we have a better understanding of the programs and projects that we teach because of it. I provided the URL here for DESE, and on there you can see a list of the learning standards. And again, we can cover this way more detail at a later time if that's something that interests you. I also know that I have colleagues that are area experts in that area, so it might be something that we do and talk about in the future. I will say that 21st century sites do get pretty excited when your curriculum has learning standards and when you have a lesson plan, because lesson plans are important in the after school world when you receive 21st century funding. You'll see here for under the area of grant monitoring, 21st century activities, enrichment components, activities, they want at least math, reading, and science activities aligned with challenging state academic standards. So that kind of provides us an opportunity to take our research-based information that we have access to within 4-H and leverage it to communicate to this audience.
Beth, may I interject?
Yes.
I am, as you go along, I am dropping these links, including the DESE one, in the chat, and then we can send these out after the program as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Eric. That's why I sent you the link before. I was hoping you would do that for me. I appreciate it. The next thing I want to cover is I want to turn the mic over to Susan.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys? So I'm going to kind of talk about lesson plans now. And on your screen, you'll see that there are two different samples of lesson plans that kind of evolved over our work with our contract work. And this lesson plan was used by our staff and also given to the Link organization to use as a guideline for their work as well when working with students. The larger picture is one that a lesson plan that we created for work with, if you're creating a lesson plan from the groundwork and you're the creator of it. The smaller image is the lesson plan that we use if we had a curriculum guided lesson that we were going to do. So if we were using, say, the EV robotics curriculum, then we would use this as a guideline to show what we would do each day as a guide. And it's a lot faster when we're using that shorter version or the smaller version of a lesson plan with each book, because you could quickly just write down your page number that you're going to be following. And so that way when a site coordinator or someone coming in and observing the lesson plan, they would be able to quickly open up the book and the page. As long as you have the curriculum and that lesson plan, they could easily find what you were doing for that day and be able to know that the goals were being met. If you kind of look closely at it, you'll see at the beginning part of the lesson plan is general information that we use just for like date and how long it'll last and that kind of thing. But then also, as Beth was talking about, we have a section for the Missouri State Standards. And we did have a learning curve over the last 2 years or a year and a half with figuring that out. But it seems a little bit overwhelming at first, but it really, there are some good resources on the DESE website that help you search and look for things in an Excel document that make finding those standards a lot easier when you're working with your figuring out what standard you're meeting for that day. So it's really is obtainable. And I think the biggest thing that we learned over the last year was that making sure that you're using the appropriate lesson plan for whichever, I guess, type of lesson that you're providing to your schools, and making sure that using the lesson plan on the right if we're using guided curriculum. So,
so the little chuckle that I have here with Susan is the fact that learn from our experience, I would say.
Yes.
I don't think that we necessarily made, experience is the word I'm going to use. So in the process of negotiating contracts and running things through the university system, we have the pleasure of having a legal department, which I appreciate because they are super helpful when needed. And in our conversation with them, we wanted to make sure that we were going to be following copyright. And so National 4-H Council actually owns a copyright, or the University of Ohio owns a copyright, or the University of Nebraska owns a copyright on the curriculum. And so when you take curriculum and you rewrite it into a lesson plan, it's the same legally as seen as photocopying it and breaking copyright, is what we have been informed. So we worked with the Afterschool Network, who works closely with DESE, to try and figure out what is needed in the lesson plan format in order to meet the qualifications and to meet the requirements of a monitoring visit, but yet also have the ability for us to be within legal ramifications and be in good graces with the copyright. I will say that there are forms to request the use of copyright and how your copywritten curriculum, and I've done that a few times with National Council. Jesse has a National Council's approval for embryology use and publications for it, what she's done before. I see Melissa as unmiked, I bet she has too. But there are two things in here. The other thing I wanted to highlight is I asked Susan to be on this call because Susan did this work for multiple years. She was hired as a YPA in Jackson County, like 10 years ago. And then she worked with a contract with 12 years, well, I don't know. Anyway, then she worked with a contract with us, really providing education to after-school providers. And this work is her work and the work of many of our colleagues that are not on the call today. And I also wanted to say that in her experience, she had been a site coordinator for a large school district before that was a grant recipient. So we've been able to kind of utilize that knowledge and our ARE knowledge, and then also our knowledge with the Afterschool Network, and come up with this platform. This is not necessarily the platform a school district would ask you to use. This is a platform that we found to be successful and helped our staff to really think about those things and figure out what supplies they needed and what they needed to prepare for, and put some reminders in there and stuff. So we can make this available, but anyway, so I want to share that with you. And thanks, Susan. Do you have anything else to add?
No, just that this is just a guideline. It's nothing that's set in stone, but and if anybody wants a copy of this, please feel free to let me know, and I would be happy to email it to you. So
yeah. And we're trying to work at really the best ways to get all these resources out to people too. I know people are kind of overdriven by box. And then sometimes the things on P drive are kind of lost. So we're in a process of that. If you have great ideas, that would be wonderful. Any questions? Okay. This could be an area, currently. I do also want to say this could be an area where there could be additional professional development. Susan actually wrote a professional development training for clock hours on how to write a lesson plan and has provided that to a couple different organizations. So it is something that can be replicated if it's an ask that you have in your local community. All right, moving forward. All right, so we talked a lot about the curriculum along with national learning standards, evaluation tools, and there's another task force meeting on evaluation. I will say that it's important to understand where we start and where we end. If you're working with an organization that is a 21st century site, they do have some evaluation, quite a bit of evaluation that they do in monitoring. And you should be able to have access and request access to like a summary of a monitoring visit in order to kind of gain access to some feedback for your program efforts. I know that our ARE in Jackson County would call and follow up anytime there was a 4-H program Just because I was in a positive working relationship with her, she would call and follow up if there was amazing things that she saw or things that, you know, she would have with improvement. It's part of their monitoring visit with the AREs, and they are really coaches in that setting and helping them to make sure to meet those standards. All right, so administration and 4-H team support, I just want to go ahead and repeat that the after school network is here. They're super friendly and ready to work with us, and the after school MOU is in place, and then strategies, and there's some area for replication of models. And when I say replication of models, I don't mean what I have done. I'm working on a list of people like Kim and how she's provided after school in Johnson County. And so that's kind of in a draft phase. I hope to get out in the next couple weeks to you guys. So you can then share with your colleagues what works best in your community. Lupita has really opened the doors for us to be able to work in these audiences that we don't have to all do things the exact same way for providers that don't always want the same thing. And so really leveraging that to your best advantage to work with kiddos in your community is going to be left up to some of you at the countywide. All right, 4-H online after school delivery strategies. I do want to make sure to reiterate 4-H online is super important. The delivery strategies that you have listed here are ones that are listed within 4-H online, and it really helps us understand who we're reaching in the state, how we're reaching them. And so I put a couple examples on there. An after school program using curricula or staff training would be entered as the top area, and then an organized 4-H after school club. And Lupita's tried to help us too by tagging that within their club name. But there are some drop down areas within 4-H online that I think would also help us to, when we're pulling data, to understand and to be able to relate and share our message on how we're reaching kids in Missouri. All right, so moving forward, I've been talking a lot today, and I really would like to hear from you. I added a question in the survey that I sent out earlier in November, where I talked about what resources you would like to have as you guys are more wrapping your brain around after school. Please feel free to reach out to me. Are you willing to co-create anything? Kim called me a couple weeks ago, and I don't know if Eric, you can unmic Kim if she's still there. I'm kind of calling her out here. She might not be on, but she was having to write a training, and it's something that I was wanting to help with another area. And I think she might, I don't see her listed now, but
I'm still here.
Hi, Kim. So Kim and I met last week, or it felt like last week. It was right before.
It sure did, yeah.
We're going to meet again next week, and we're coming. Kim, if you want to talk about the ask that you had from your after-school provider locally.
The what? I'm sorry?
The ask. What did she ask you?
Oh, the ask. Okay. I couldn't understand. There are other things that I was thinking of when you said that. Sorry. The after-school program here in Warrensburg has approached me because they want to use 4-H curriculum as their primary source of curriculum for all of the programming that they do in their sites. And so the linking it to standards, which freaked me out, and Beth has helped me a little bit with that. I need to work on some more, and I may be calling Susan because I know she's great at that. But helping them provide the link for those standards and the curriculum. And now I'm doing some training with them on how to use the curriculum, the best way to use that curriculum, so that they can just take it and run with it in their programs. We're also doing some stuff on leadership, but I'll be providing several different trainings for their staff on how to better provide youth development programs, I guess, for the youth in the Warrensburg School District that go to the after-school program.
So Kim's also has probably 5 or 6 trainings that she's done for them over the years that she has in the clock hour system. So we're reaching out to find out what are ways that we can replicate that model, because receiving clock hours for after-school professionals is important to them, and it helps them meet licensure. And then sometimes there are teachers that it's not necessarily as important if they don't have a licensed site. So anyway, Thank you, Kim, for sharing. And thanks, Kim, for inviting me to help, because I think that it's nice to be able to collaborate with our coworkers. My experience is my experience, Kim's experience is Kim's experience, but it's nice to kind of play off of that as we're co-creating some pieces that can be replicated for people. So
thanks for being willing to help too, Beth.
It's my job, but you're welcome. All right. And then, so professional, any suggestions out there for things, any asks that you had that maybe we can put out and find out if there are other people that have already done that lesson, you know, that have already put those things in play. Those are things that I really hope that you can either individually reach out to me and ask me, and we can try and work and get this leveled up to the next level here. I also see a good crosswalk between like the training that Kim and I are working on, which is how to use 4-H curriculum, to be a crosswalk into also school day teacher and how to use 4-H curriculum, and changing out a little bit of that information, because they're not going to use a broad array of activities, they're not going to use those kind of things, but really making it adaptable that we can work in an educational system better in Missouri. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. I don't know if you want to throw some questions in the chat. If you have anything else, what else can I do in this role to help us move forward?
Definitely. A couple of different ways folks can do that. You can unmute yourself if you feel so inclined, or drop them in the chat and I will ask them. I should also point out that in the recording, I am not going to edit out that little first exchange between Kim and Beth. It was kind of humorous, but you are free to answer your questions, and I will pipe some in as the mood suits me. So go ahead, either way.
I'll explain the little explain between Kim and I. So Kim, the coordinator that she has in Warrensburg, is one that we've worked with before, and so it's just kind of like, what were you asked to do? Okay, yeah, let's do that. So that's what the ask was. What were you asked? Oh, okay, the ask. Got it.
Beth, can you talk, or whoever, can talk a little bit more about what teachers are looking for in terms of school standards in Missouri? Like if we can match them.
School day or after school?
After school, how after school can support the school day standards. So whenever they want the curriculum to match the standards, if the curriculum has national standards, is that all that teachers need, or is there something else that they need?
So in review on that earlier slide, I put in there right here, the grant monitoring. For a 21st century site, this is the monitoring requirement. Now, I've spoke with Terry with the network, and there is an ability to crosswalk. There's actually some additional tools we can show you that Susan and I and our colleagues have found when we all did a day-wide training on learning standards. And there's a crosswalk tool that'll take a national learning standard and then crosswalk it over to a Missouri learning standard. But you'll see here that local school districts make their own decisions about curriculum. I took this information on the top part of this slide here, right from the DESE website, because I think it's important to understand that they make their own decisions about curriculum. They, you know, if they want to use 4-H, you know, if they want to use, say, butterfly wings in their classroom to teach the process, the life cycle process, or if they want to use embryology in their classroom to teach the life cycle process, they can use our curriculum to do that. They're not required. You know, this statute or this rule with DESE allows them to use anything they want to use. So I don't know if that, so Melissa, to answer your question, the other thing that after school providers that are grant funded are required to do is also prove that they're speaking with the principals and the teachers and the classroom to see what academic supports need to be in after school. And that's another part of the monitoring visit, but it's also just part of being in the community in a school setting. So if you have the same kids in the day program that's in the after school program, so if you have a kid that's struggling with her spelling words, how can we do that? If you have a child that, if you know, your third grade class has things coming up and we need to change what we're doing. We did that a lot in after school. We had a program project going and we needed to switch into more of a academic role, and they would pull them out for tutoring. Those things were all aligned as the spring semester moved forward. Does that answer your question, Melissa?
Yeah, thanks. And did you say you'd send out that PowerPoint or the links?
It's in there, but I can't. It would probably be better if I put that into like a Word document.
Yeah, thanks. That'd be
And,
great.
and let's and I would really like, and I need to talk to Sherry about this. How do we share resources back and forth? You know, is Box our best way? Once you share resources, it kind of reviewed or approved. So that's one thing that I know that Missouri statewide we're moving forward on. And I look forward to finding out a good solution for people for that. I know Sherry, when she shares the Box stuff, she shares it from a link that you can go in instead of sharing her box with everyone. So maybe the people that, so then you can continue to have access to it. So
As one of the less seasoned folks online, I just want to point out your box. It's pretty easy to get in. It's just your paw print if you haven't ever been in there. So
yeah.
Anytime you follow a link, you'll be prompted to log in. You'll go to a Missouri system screen, and it's just your regular sign-in credentials. So.
All right. I'm around and available if I can help with anyone, or if I can direct you to somebody that can help you better. Because there's a lot of people that have been doing after school in Missouri longer than me. So
I have a question.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi,
Go ahead.
okay. I have a
Yeah.
question. I have a 21st century, I had a 21st century learning grant program in a small rural district for the past 5 years. And now this fall, they do not have the 21st century learning grant, but are determined to keep 4-H after school going.
That's awesome, because that's their sustainability model, I'm sure.
Yes, but the problem, and maybe some people have some suggestions, the problem is that when it was all free, all the kids were there. Half the school was enrolled in 4-H after school, and came after school every day. Now parents aren't willing to pay, and so we have very few kids enrolled in the program and coming after school. I mean, literally, parents are taking their kids to work after school from 3 till 4:30 or whatever in the small community. And so it's how to get those kids back to the after school program where they need to be. So I don't know if anybody has some suggestions. Of course, I guess funding is a lot of it, but
it is. I've been where you are when I've worked with districts that, and then when the funding goes out and then the district has to then charge for the service, it's tough. And I think those, one thing that I can say is what are they doing? Is the program different than it was? Are they still doing the project-based learning activities? Are they still doing broad array activities? Those are things that kind of come into play too.
Yeah, and they are. This is a principal superintendent that's also a club leader, and so, had been a club leader, knows the program, and they are doing one Friday a month is actually a club meeting. They do service projects. They've done everything from electricity to
so
food.
It's just paying for so do you find the barrier to be that the parents now have to pay to bring their child to after school?
Yes, that's what they are seeing. So quality of programming. That was my first thought, was if you quality. So the only thing I've come up with is that we're going to try to maybe offer some type of like spin type clubs to where you can get them to come for 5 to 6 sessions for a certain project area.
That's what they've done in independent school district, that they have them kind of pay for a short window of services rather than a full year enrollment. I've seen that be successful. And then they're really committed to coming, because on Wednesday I sign my child up on Wednesday.
Yeah, and the kids want that particular, they're really choosing.
Correct. Yeah, they chose to be in robotics. They chose to do public speaking.
And the cooking is very popular, and so the kids love that. But it's So anyway, okay. If anybody else has ideas, that's after 21st century.
It is tough. It's really tough.
Sustainability. And they're supposed to build that in. I know 21st century, it should be building in sustainability, but.
And I know your voice, but I can't tell who you are.
Oh, this is Diana Koenig in Perry.
Hi, Diana. Okay, I thought it was you. I was like, yeah. So.
Can I say something, Beth?
Oh, absolutely.
I I think that a lot of you are struggling with the same thing that Jan is talking about. Why don't we get together with Beth, you and myself, and try to find a solution to this problem? I really think that if you have an audience, we need to start offering the program. And if the money is a limitation, we need to figure out a way to do it. We cannot limit the 4-H participation, do the fees, because we receive federal money. So I'm sure that Beth can take the lead on this and let me know how can I help.
So Diana, I think what I was hearing too, Lapita, is the fact that the whole school is having a problem coming because they were a free service. Was I hearing that correctly? They were a free service because they received the 21st Century Grant. And then as they went into a sustainability model and they ended year 5, now the enrollment in year 6 has greatly reduced. Is that so the whole school program, did I understand you correctly, Diana?
Were paid by the 21st Century Learning Grant. So, I mean, the challenge is finding enough volunteers to do it without being paid versus the grant of actually, having paid staff.
Yeah.
Diana, how much does after school cost? Do you know?
Hold on, I think Diane's muted. Where did you go? Here you are.
Working on it yet this year, so.
Oh.
Diane, could you repeat that? I think I had you muted through most of that.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what the what their cost is for after school. I definitely could find out, but anyway, we'll work on it and see how the year goes. And I will say also that it's great that we can enroll, 4-H after school can be group enrolled, and then not pay the full $20, fees, and just for those kids that are interested in doing things outside of the school, which that's after school group. I've had kids to participate in the fair, in like a few kids from that club has come to officers training, to other countywide 4-H activities, just a few.
Awesome.
But still, yeah, they have, and that's something that the principal, the superintendent has strongly, encouraged. And they have the county fairs right in their community. So they have taken all their projects. I mean, the school has helped them get it all ready and taken their projects to the county fair.
So one thing, a suggestion and we can talk about this later and come up with maybe a list of ideas from across the state that people have done. One thing that worked in a district that I worked in is that the school district so there's it's called Raising, I forgot what it's called, within the school district, where the teachers receive a small stipend. It's less than the cheerleading coach stipend, that they do groups after school. So really paralleling that with 4-H curriculum, because sometimes they're looking for, they've taught all day.
Sure. Yes.
So
yes.
That's one thing that I found successful in a district that I worked in, that we had grant funding. And then the district didn't want it to leave, but yet didn't have enough money for it to go on forever. But they did a robotics unit like that. They've done a sports fishing unit like that in the past, where it was just a short, brief program and the kids might re-enroll every time, so they are there, and other kids only come for that spin experience.
Right. Well, and
it might not be when the parents need them to be there. If you're in a rural community, you might need to be there during planting and harvesting season. Mm-hmm. Where there's maybe not another adult that can come get them.
Yes. So, well, that's great. The stipend, that's a great idea for, short, small stipend.
From the district. Yeah.
Right. From the district. And if that money could even be, you never know, you could have a community that could raise funds for that, or organizations that would help fund the after school program.
Yeah. Another thing is that working with a class project in the high school, where you can have team leaders, so you might still be in ratio. You want to make sure that they know that there is a kind of a safety concern in a ratio. I've personally experienced that with my own child's program. They're not licensed, so just making sure there's enough adults in the room to make sure the kids are safe.
And this school only goes to 8th grade.
Yeah.
So there's not the high school component, but.
Awesome. Thanks for the questions. And I appreciate the group think about that, because these are all things that as extension we can help these programs navigate.
Absolutely. If you haven't really poked around your district, yeah, talk to the, if they have an after-school program, talk to them. I'm thinking of one district where the school district did have a stipend for their teachers to lead an after-school program, but yeah, definitely the programs for the kids had to be free. So kind of investigate what situation they're in, and that's probably a good first step. Do we have any other questions or thoughts, success stories, or where you are at, what you're feeling right now, ready to dive in?
Any things that you guys want us to host further professional development on? I know that professional development committee is really trying to meet all of our needs. So make sure and verbalize those if you have needs, because you're probably not the only one. So thank you, Eric, for encouraging us and working on this. I really appreciate it. It's always nice to share with our colleagues and to hear from other colleagues too.
It is. We're definitely a statewide program, and just hearing those success stories. And we've identified a few experts among us. Definitely ask them. I am sharing the results of the poll. The 0 through 4 years, which I am still part of, we are the biggest team, a biggest group on the poll, but we know we bring collective experiences, that outside perspective, with the idea that we can't do it without those folks who have 5 years or more experience. So we want to thank everybody for being here and sharing and asking questions and things like that. That's how we learn. Definitely want to thank Beth for coming today, and this is again how we get to know what everyone is doing. And I'm sure the Professional Development Committee, as they move forward, they'll think of other ways for this kind of cross-state collaboration and conversations. Just a reminder, I am recording this, almost said podcast, but yeah, kind of like a podcast, and I will share that out later as a link. Any other thoughts or passing words of wisdom? Seeing none, thank you all. We're just about 11 o'clock. Thank you for spending an hour with us. And we'll end the meeting if I don't see any other questions, which I don't. So again, thank you, Beth, and everybody enjoy 2020 and the rest of your day.
All right, thank you.
And I'm going to stop recording.